Well, good morning again. That was good, right? Whew, man. Yes, it was. I thought a little better than that. That was really good. I love to sing those songs and sing with you. Thank you. So John Piper is a pastor, retired now, but from Minnesota. And this is what he said. This is, I think, a profound thought. He said, God was very kind to me when I was 17 years old. When I was 17 years old in high school. Something came alive. I can pinpoint the class. It was Mrs. Clanton's class in English. Something came alive that has never died. I was already walking with Jesus, and so it wasn't faith that came alive. It was an awakening of the wonder and the weight of having one life to live. And then, its outcome for eternity. No second chances. No do-overs. One life. And then eternity. I've got one life. One life. And I can blow it forever. Or not. He went on to write a poem. Imagine this, a 17-year-old kid in high school English class. He wrote a poem entitled The Lost Years. The poem was written from the perspective of an old man looking back at his life. And in the last verse, he writes these words. Imagine an old man looking back at his life. Long I sought for the earth's hidden meaning. Long as a youth was my search in vain. Now as I approach my last year's waning, my search must begin again. What a tragedy to have lived your life and to stand on the precipice of eternity and to look back and say, I don't know what it was about. I don't know if I wasted it. To find out that you invested in the wrong things. You've invested in something that can be stolen, or that can rust, or that moth can come in and eat away. To find that you wasted the one and only life that you've been given on trifles and trivialities, knowing that you are about to stand in the presence of the Creator and King of the universe. That's heavy. That's a powerful thought. May it never be said of any of you that you go to your grave not knowing what your purpose was. This life is so brief. Scripture says it's a vapor, right? Snap your fingers and it's done. You look back on the years and they do go by so quickly. It's incredible. And the question is, what have I done with the life that I've been given? So for the last several years, it seems maybe once a year, I break out this little example. Because I want you to see. We live in a world that really has two different viewpoints. There are those who have what I would call a naturalistic worldview. And they would say that life is just what it is. You're an animal, maybe more evolved, and when you die, you're dead. You're never going to live again, and it's over. So, get everything you can out of it. Don't think about what may come. No. So, if this is a timeline, if you can see it now, you probably can. Imagine on this timeline of, eternity, one day you were born. And you live this life, and it's a long life, right? Years and years and years, and you grow up, and you want to grow up, and you want to get older, and when you're 16, you want to be 18, and when you're 18, you want to be 21, and when you're 21, you want to graduate from college, find somebody to marry, and you marry them, and you have children, and you get a job, and you live, and you live, and you live, and eventually you retire. You begin to get older. Decrepit, age sets in, and eventually your life ends. And that's it. So in the middle of life, I do everything I can. Paul even said, if there's no resurrection, live it up while you've got it. But don't think about what's after that. I do funerals, and I can see in people's eyes, just shut up. Let's get to the potato salad. Let's bury the guy and forget about it. Stop talking about forever. It's amazing. That's the perspective of so many people. They don't want to think about forever. They want to live right now. But I would suggest something altogether different. Whether you're a believer or not, it's the truth. If this is the line of eternity, which we can't even begin to put on the stage, just imagine that, that's eternity past. That's millions of years that way and millions of years this way, and it goes on forever. And in this timeline, one day, you are born. And you live a really long life. When you're 16, you want to be 21, and so on. And you get decrepit. And eventually, you die. Where on this grand timeline of eternity would the life you live be? It would be in between the clothespins. And I would say that it would be, about that much space. Why do we spend so much time thinking about what's inside of the clothespins when we have forever to look forward to? And that what goes on inside of this little life will echo into eternity. That what you do here will determine everything on this side of it. It's a pretty incredible thought, isn't it? That your life is so small, so finite, so short, a vapor, and eternity waits for you. Will you think about that with me for just a few moments today? That you are going to live forever someday, and soon and very soon, before you will even know it, you are going to stand before this God that we sang about and give an account of your life. And for some of you, you're dreading that. You're thinking, oh no. But for a believer, we ought to relish that thought. We ought to look forward to it. One of these days, we're going to stand before our King, and He may say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Oh, I saw your faithfulness. And that's why Paul could write what he wrote last week. Remember, he's telling Timothy, I'm about to be gone. I'm about to be dead. My head is going to be separated from my shoulders. And he says this. He says, now there is in store for me. In other words, it doesn't end now. I'm about to die. My life's being poured out like a drink offering. The time of my departure is at hand. So it's over, right? It's ended. No, it's just beginning now. There is in store for me the crown of righteousness, the crown that is righteousness, that I will be made complete in Him. That's next for me, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. But then he goes on, and this is even better because it's talking about us, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for His appearing, who have loved His appearing. Are you looking forward to that? That it could happen right now, a second from now, 10 minutes from now, the Lord could come back, you could hear the trumpet, and off we go. Wouldn't that be amazing? And He is looking forward to that with great anticipation. The word for long for is a word, it's actually, believe it or not, it's agape. It's loved. To entertain, to be fond of, to love dearly, to be well pleased, to be contented with, to welcome. I long for. I love that thought that Jesus is coming again. I can't wait to see Him. That's Paul's thought. Is that your thought? That one of these days He's coming to get His own, and eternity will then begin. What will that be like? And we have to be careful, don't we, when we think about standing before God. And what I'm saying is certainly not you have to work your way there. Jesus tells two parables. Do you remember these two parables? He tells one where there was a worker or an owner of a vineyard or a field. And early in the morning, he goes and he finds these guys who want to work, these day laborers. And early in the morning, probably before sunrise, he finds them and he agrees on a price. For a denarius, I will pay you if you'll work all day for me. And they agree to that. That's a good deal. I mean, that's not a bad day's wage. So they begin to work early in the morning. And then at 9 o'clock, he goes back to the same place and he finds some other guys and he brings them in. At 12, he does the same thing. At 3, he does the same thing. At 6 o'clock in the evening, he does the same thing. And then at 7 and at 8 o'clock, almost before quitting time, he goes to these guys and he says, come work for me. And they all go. And they arrive at the job site, and like 10 minutes later, the day's over. And they all gather together to be paid. And who does he pay first? He pays the guys who showed up last first. And they got a denarii. And the guys that came early in the morning, like at 5 o'clock before sunrise, they're like, wait a minute. We came early in the morning. We worked our whole day, and you're paying these guys the same thing? That's not fair. And what does he say? He says, what do you care what they make? We agreed, didn't we, that this is what you would get. It's my business what I pay them. This is a story of grace. Some of you came to know Jesus when you were little. You have a whole life to live for him. Others, when you're later. And some of you, when you're on your, one foot on a banana peel and one on the grave. I mean, you're just about there, but you've seen the grace of God and you've responded to it. Same thing is what you get, and that is heaven. That you too will be made completely righteous because that's God's grace, that's God's mercy. The thief on the cross, he died the day he trusted in Christ. He had no time to serve him, but he got eternity. So he's saying, this is a gift, it's a free gift, it's for anybody who would receive it. But then Jesus tells another parable. He tells a parable about a man who owned some property and he had these guys that worked for him. And he was going off on a long journey, and he gave different talents to, or different levels of money to 3 different guys. To one, he gave 5 talents. To one, he gave 2. And to one, he gave 1. And the guy with the 5 talents took that money and he multiplied it, doubled it. The man with 2 talents multiplied that, doubled it. The one with 1 talent buried it, did nothing with it. And when the king came back, the one who had doubled it, the other one who had doubled it, hey, great is your reward. You are faithful in a few things, so here I'm going to make you responsible for a lot of things. And the one who buried it got nothing. This is about rewards. That there's this sense that heaven is for anybody that would trust in Christ, but that there is a reward that's greater than just heaven. It's responsibilities in heaven. It's something that we can look forward to. And this is Paul's thought, is I have been faithful and I can't wait to see him. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, Paul says this, and I'll read verse 10 to you up on the screen, but I want to read the first few verses first because I want you to listen to it. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 6. He says, therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, right here, we're away from the Lord. For we live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and to be at home with the Lord. Listen, so we make it our goal to please him, whether we are home at the body or away from it. And then he says this. So I want you to get the idea. He's anticipating. I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to stand before God. I've allowed my life to please him. And then he says this. He says, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done while in the body, whether good or bad. Now, when you see the word bad, don't think evil, but just think useless, empty calories, that sort of thing. It's like marshmallows. Although I'm finding out that marshmallows are not empty calories. They're full of carbs. Don't eat them. Sorry. I don't know where that came from, but it's just true. So it's like that. He's saying to you, you're being watched, and what you do with your life, there's a good thing. There's an investing in eternal things, and then there is a wasting of your time, and it just simply will not be awarded. It doesn't mean that you'll be punished for it. You simply won't receive a reward. And then he goes and in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 and paints this incredible picture, one of the best you can imagine. Listen to this. If you need to close your eyes to get a mental image, go ahead. But Paul says this, by the grace God has given me, I laid a foundation as a wise builder. So Paul is into foundations. He does basements, he does foundation work, okay? And that foundation is Jesus Christ. I laid a foundation as a wise builder, and someone else is building on it. But each one should build with care. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Jesus. If you have trusted Christ, He is your foundation. And that's good news. If anyone builds on this foundation using gold, silver, costly stones, and when you hear costly stones, I want you to think granite, okay? Some really good building material. Or wood, hay, or straw. He goes on and he says, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day, capital D, will bring it to light. It will be revealed by fire, or with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. So this is talking about believers. This isn't an unbeliever's judgment. This is for believers. If what he has built survives, the builder will receive a reward. But if it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but he will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. So his picture is, I'm a foundation builder. I've built the foundation, and it's Jesus. You build on it. And you can build with whatever material you want. You can build with things that are going to burn up, things that are not going to last. And he uses wood, hay, and straw. And you notice wood, hay, and straw, they're all on the surface of the earth. They're not hard to obtain. But gold, silver, precious stone has to be quarried, has to be dug. There's a denseness, there's a deepness to that thought. And he says, if you're shallow, if you're just living your life for you, and you're building on Jesus Christ using these material, one day, it's all going to be burned up. And you will be happy and you'll be sad in the same moment, because it'll be like somebody escaping a fire. When the house is on fire, all you want to do is get out, and you look back at that house that's being engulfed in flames, and in one sense you're grateful that you're alive. But then you're looking at all of your possessions, and they're all going up in flames, and you've got nothing. This is what Paul is getting at. I still remember when I was a young child, I went to church way before I became a Christian with my aunt and uncle down in Arkansas. And I remember the preacher standing up there giving this illustration. He said there was a man who was a carpenter, and he worked for a boss. And this man was about to retire. He was about to be done. He was about to work on his last project. And the boss came to him and says, listen, on this project, I want you to use the best material. No price is too high. Do what you can to build the very best house that you can. Don't waste, don't cut corners, okay? He said, all right. You going to check up on me? No, I just want you to do it. Okay. The boss walks away. He gets to thinking, hey, he says price is no object. What if I just tell him that I use the best product? I mean, every house that's new, it looks good. So you know what he started to do? He started to use shoddy material. And everything that he built with was not as good as it could have been when he was told to use the best. And he finishes the house. And a new house, it looked great. And he stood before the house, and his boss came in, and he said, oh man, this looks great. Yeah, well, I did the best. He said, well, here's the thing. You see, you've been such a faithful worker for me. And I know you're retiring. And so what I wanted to do is, as a token of my appreciation to you, I just wanted you to build your own retirement house. And he hands him the keys to this house, this shoddy house. He could have used the best and lived in it in luxury, but he didn't. And this is our opportunity. God is saying to us, you're going to live in the house you build spiritually. And you can build with gold and silver, precious stones. Price is not an option. Or you can use shoddy material and it's going to be burnt up. You know, there's this scene in Schindler's List. If you've ever seen the movie, every time I watch it, it brings me to tears because I can't help but think, is this what it's going to be like at the judgment seat of Christ? Do you remember Oskar Schindler? He saved 1,100 Jews from the concentration camps. He spent a whole lot of money, a fortune, to save these guys. And at the end of the movie, the Nazis have lost the war. The Jews are going to be set free. And Schindler is trying to escape because he himself is a Nazi. And there he is, surrounded by 1,100 people that he saved. And they present to him a ring. Do you remember the ring? Beautiful, beautiful golden ring that they took out of one of their own mouths from their filling and made a ring out of it. And they gave it to him as a token of their appreciation. And as he's putting the ring on and shaking the hand of this guy named Stern, this is what he says. I could have gotten more out if I would have just. And Stern says, Oskar, there are 1,100 who are alive because of you. Look at them. If I'd made more money, I threw away so much money. You have no idea. I didn't do enough. This car. Why did I keep this car? 10 people right there. 10 people. 10 more people. This pin. 2 people. This is gold. 2 more people. He would have given me 2 for it. At least 1. He would have given me 1. 1 more. 1 person. A person, Stern. For this. I could have gotten 1 more person. And I didn't. And I didn't. And he begins to weep uncontrollably. Because, yes, he did great, but there's a sense that he could have done more, that he wasted so much. And I get the feeling that I hope that's not going to happen to us, that we look back and go, oh man, I wasted it, I spoiled it, I built with shoddy material. And Paul is saying, I didn't. I built with the best. I had this opportunity and I didn't waste it. Now there's this real temptation as we move forward that you think I'm going to come up with a list of things that you need to do now in order to stand pure in front of Jesus that day. I don't want you to think about a list. I don't want to begin to get legalistic about this. I want to be really, really careful. While there are things that you can do for sure, it's not about that, okay? Make sure you understand that. Here's the goal of your life. The goal of your life isn't to try to do a lot of things for God. The goal for your life is God's glory. If that's what you're thinking about, that I want God to be glorified in my life, that's what you think about, and then everything else will trickle out from there. Lord, I want to glorify you in whatever I do, in what I say, in where I go, in what I watch, in what I listen to, in the company that I keep, in the things that I involve myself. Lord, I just want you to be glorified. And the Lord will take care of the rest. This is what you're thinking about, the glory of God. Paul said, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. I would like to suggest to you and to me that our goal in this life is to make Jesus Christ famous, to glorify him in my actions. And everything else will supernaturally just come out of my life. God, I want you to be glorified. What does that word mean, glory? The word can be translated weight. that there's a significance to God, that there's a weightiness to God, that he is substantial. Worth was measured by weight. They would put the gold on the scale and it would be measured by how much it weighs. God is heavy in that sense. He's substantial, and we must think about that. And he said to you and to me, I will not share my glory with another. So what I'm saying is this, okay? Please hear me correctly. I am not saying put God first, because that means something will be second, which can eventually usurp him and become first. I am saying make God and his glory the very centerpiece of your life, that everything else would orbit around the glory of God. That you would be so affected by who he is that he affects everything else in your life. And I believe in doing that God is central and I am orbiting around him, that he penetrates every fiber of my being. What comes out of my mouth, what my eyes see, what my ears hear, where my feet take me, how I respond to situations. This is Jesus Christ living his life in me to his glory. And I believe if that's your focus, then God is going to take you on the ride of your life. That this will be something that you will never regret. And one of these days you stand before him and you say, oh, it was worth it all. It was hard. It was terrifying at times, but it was worth it all. I drove to Salina this week. I don't know if you've ever done this, but when I got in the car, there was a little bug on my windshield, and it was alive. It wasn't like I squished him going 55 miles an hour. He was there alive on the outside of my window. And I thought, let's see what this bug has in him. And so I start to drive. You've done this, right? Isn't it fun? You spend most of your time looking at the bug, wondering, oh, is he still going to be on there? So, you're going 25, and he's kind of shaking, 35, shaking, 55, and he's like holding on for dear life. And you wonder, what is the bug thinking? If I let go, I'm going to be destroyed. And he's holding on, eyes are big, shaking, but he's like, wow, what a ride. This is amazing. I can't fly this fast. This is incredible. And this is what I think, it could be like, that we would become fully alive, just like this kid. I love that picture. He is fully alive. He is experiencing something that nobody can ever forget. This ought to be the look of a Christian. Whoa! Where are we going? This is amazing. When God is glorified in our life, I'll get rid of it or you'll never hear me again. When God is glorified in our life, we're most satisfied. John Piper said it. When we are most satisfied in God, he is most glorified in us. What God wants to do is he wants to be glorified, and he wants to display his glory so that we might receive it. He is pouring out his glory, his weightiness, who he is on us so that we would receive it. How do you receive God's glory? Just a few thoughts on that. First of all, let me encourage you to long for it, to have a heart for it, to say even today, Lord, I do not long for your glory. I long for my glory. Please remove that. I want you to be glorified. Just start with that prayer. Lord, I long for your glory. I want you to be heavy in my life. I want your gravitational pull on me to be so strong that I cannot separate myself from you. I want to say, like the psalmist did, one thing I ask from the Lord, that I shall seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. What he's saying is that I would walk in the presence of God every step of the way, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to meditate on him in his temple. God, give us a heart for your glory. Increase in us that desire. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this racehorse named Secretariat. In 1973, Secretariat won the Triple Crown and set records in every single race. In the Preakness, in the Belmont, in the Kentucky Derby. And the Kentucky Derby ran away with the race. Started off fast and finished faster. Incredible horse. Historic horse. They wanted to know what made Secretariat such an amazing animal. When Secretariat died, they did a autopsy on his body. And when they got to his heart, they were astounded. Most horses' hearts weigh 9 pounds, which is incredible when you think about it. 9 pounds. Do you know how much Secretariat's heart weighed? 22 pounds. And it wasn't just like it was abnormally large and infected. It was strong. It was made right. It could pump that, oxygen-giving blood through the body so much quicker. And that's why that horse did what it did. How big is your heart for the glory of God? Long for it. Next, I would say, don't just long for it, but look for it. See God's glory in everything that you look at. You don't just have to go to the Rocky Mountains to see God's glory, although it's there and it's amazing. You don't have to go to the ocean to see God's glory, although it's there and it's amazing. Just look up in the stars on a dark night and look at how amazing that is. Did you see the full moon recently? Incredible. What are you looking for? I love this passage. It says, the heavens declare, shout out the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they reveal knowledge. And then he says this, it's so cool. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them, yet their voices go out into all the earth. Their words to the end of the world. It's right in front of you. It's the person sitting next to you. They are full of God's glory. Inside of one strand of DNA is like 3 billion or 13 billion bits of information. Inside of you, you are the glory of God because you're his creation. You can see it everywhere, and we miss it all the time. A couple years ago, this kid from New York via South Korea showed up at the Bennington Bible Church. Some of you may have been here. He went to a university in New York. He was from South Korea. He was riding his bike across America, and he stopped at our little church. And he was hard to understand, but he said, can I stay here for the night? We said, sure. He said, do you have any food? I said, you're in Bennington on a Sunday afternoon? No. But I will take you to McDonald's. He said, oh no, I need something better than that. Well, la-di-da. So I said, all right, hop in my truck. We'll go to Chili's. That's better, isn't it? So we're driving to Chili's, and I took, is it Old 81? Yeah, Old 81 in that way. So it was, I think it's nice, but we didn't see anything any special. And we go, and I get him a couple meals at Chili's, and then we take Highway 35 back. All right, it's just before harvest. The wheat is golden. It's beautiful. The sun is setting. But how many times have I seen this? It didn't appeal to me at all. But this kid from South Korea, from New York, when we get out on the highway and he sees the beautiful wheat field and he sees the sun setting, here's his words, 3 of them. Ready? Awesome! And that's how he said it. Awesome! Awesome! He couldn't stop saying awesome. I'm like, awesome? What are you talking about? It's God's creation. I see it every day, and I get used to it. We should see it all the time in everything that we look at because it's shouting to us. Long for God's glory. Look for God's glory, and then live inside of God's glory. You have to walk with him and talk with him. Let him live his life through you. Put yourself in spots where he is present in your life. This Friday in one of my men's groups, we were talking about something, and Mark Depperschmidt, he said something to this effect. He said, I try to think that when I'm in a difficult situation, I just take the hand of Jesus and he walks me through the situation. And I thought, that's good. And for some reason, as he's saying this, a song pops into my head. And I'm not a hippie, and I can't even remember where this came from, but I'm going to just sing a few bars. Join me if you'd like, if it picks up. Some of you that are older, ready? This is the song that came to me while he's saying this. Put your hand in the hand of the one man who stilled the water. You know it? Put your hand in the hand of the man who calmed the sea. Take a look at yourself and you will look at others differently by putting your hand in the hand of the man of Galilee. Remember that song? It's like 1971. I don't even know where that came from. But I'm thinking, that's what he's talking about. I texted Greg Tanzer. I said, hey, Greg, who wrote or who sang Put Your Hand in the Man? And he's like, Ocean? I said, did you know that? He said, no, but Siri did. So I didn't know who it was, but that's what I'm talking about. It's putting your hand in the hand of the one who stilled the waters and calmed the sea. He's the one that we walk with, and he gives us this ability to do great things. So live in it. Walk with him. I love what the psalmist says in Psalm 24. Who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, and who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to falsehood and has not sworn deceitfully. He shall receive a blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. This is the generation of those who seek him, who seek your face, even Jacob. Selah. Do you know what Selah means? It means stop and think about it. Pause in your busyness and understand that God is looking for somebody whose heart is fully on him. So receive his glory. God displays it so that you'd receive it. Next, God displays his glory that you might rejoice in it. That you might sing to him and say, oh God, you're amazing, and I want to rejoice in it. I love what the psalmist says in Psalm 22. He says, but you are holy, enthroned in the praises of your people, that God inhabits the praise of his people, that he sits enthroned on our praise. You want to get into a deeper walk with him? Let me suggest singing to him. I realize that worship is more than singing, but particularly singing. Oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to him with psalms. For the Lord is great, a great God, and the great King above all gods, small g. Rejoice when he reveals himself, when he displays himself. Rejoice in who he is. Because when you start to do that, when he reveals himself to you, when you receive that glory, when you rejoice in that, he begins to change you as a person. And you will finally do the last thought, and that is that when God displays his glory, you and I will reflect it. That when he pours it out on us, it will go out and it will reflect to many other people. If you saw the full moon this week, it was pretty amazing, wasn't it? I mean, anytime there's a full moon, I just love it. I can't help it. It's just incredible. But here's what's so amazing, is a moon, it's pretty drab. It's just gray dust. It is not only, it is only beautiful in the extent that it reflects the light of the sun. Itself, it is not beautiful. It is a dark rock. But it reflects, doesn't it? Do you know how much the moon reflects? Do you know what it's, according to astronomers, it's called the albedo. You know what the albedo is for the moon? Its reflectivity? 12%. 12% of the sunlight that hits the moon actually reflects off of it. And it can be awesome at times, right? You know what planet reflects the most? Venus at 75%. Do you know what the Earth's reflectivity is? 30%. We're better than the moon, but we're not even close to Venus. Mars is 25%. Jupiter is 34%. And that planet that is no longer a planet, Pluto, 72%. It's brighter than most of the planets. I don't know why they took it out of there. When Moses stood before God, he came down from the mountain and his face was glowing because of the presence of God. How about you? Do you reflect the glory of God? If you're dark, there's a chance that you haven't been in his presence lately. But if you're not, then you can't help but shine. It's who you are. I shared this with the students a couple weeks ago about a professor. His name was Dr. Papadouros. At the end of one of his classes, he said, does anybody have any question for me? And some wise guy student said, yes, Dr. Papadouros, I have one question. I'd like for you to tell me the meaning of life. At the end of class, seriously, that's what you're going to ask me? And guess what the professor did? He said, you know what? I'm going to answer that question. I want to answer that question. And he reached into his pocket and he pulled out this little mirror that was of the shape of about a silver dollar. And he said this. He said, when I was a child, I began to realize that I could have so much fun with that mirror. I would simply catch the glint of the sun and shine that mirror into an otherwise darkened place. As I grew older, I began to learn that this is no child's toy. This is really a metaphor of my life. Now, I'm not the light. I'm not the source of the light. I am simply a broken mirror fragment. But if I allow the sun to shine on my mirror fragment, it is amazing what light I can bring into dark spaces. And then he said, this, ladies and gentlemen, is the meaning of life. Make God glorified in your life. In whatever that is, give him the glory in your life. Make him look valuable in every aspect of your life. In your life, in your death, in your suffering, in your sorrow or joy, while you're young, as you get older, and when you're about to die. Give him an opportunity to shine on you that you might reflect him. Jesus said in Matthew 5, let your light so shine before others so that they see your good works and give glory to the Father who is in heaven. Hey, church, this is our calling. This is what you and I ought to do. I love the story about a pastor who was called in the middle of the night to hear that his church was engulfed in flames. Upon arrival, he witnessed that there was a businessman standing outside there watching the church burn. And this was a man named Frank. Frank is a man that the pastor had invited to church many times. And Frank had always refused. And there they stood in the aftermath of this fire. And the pastor said, well, Frank, this is the first time I've ever seen you at church. And he said, well, Pastor, this is the first time I've ever seen your church on fire. So I thought I would come. Maybe that's right. Light yourself on fire. People come watch you burn. Burn for him. Be glorified through him. And sometimes when we think about his glory, we also have to think about guarding it. That there are times when his glory is perverted by what people believe, perverted by what people would say, perverted by what people would do. Remember when Jesus came into the temple twice? What was under attack? What was under attack was the glory of God. God had set up his temple for a specific purpose, and it wasn't happening. And he made a whip, and he turned over tables, and he chased people out because the glory of God was at stake. When the glory of God is at stake, we must voice that. Let that be known, that it may not be perverted. There was a college professor who stood before his class at the beginning of the semester, and in typical non-believing professor thought, he said to them, I want you to know that there is no God. and I am going to prove to you that there is no God. I'm going to sit on this stool, and I'm going to ask God to knock me off that stool, and I'll wait. Oh God, if you are there, knock me off the stool. And he sat. Class is in stunned silence. 10 minutes go by. He says, see? No God. 15 minutes go by. And there was a Marine in the back of the room. And he stood up. And he walked to the professor. And with all of his might, he punched that professor. Knocked him off his stool. Stood over him and said, I am the answer to your prayer. There is a God, and you are not going to pervert his glory. Now, I am not suggesting that, okay? It's an illustration. It only goes so far. But you understand that sometimes you are the voice. You are the voice of reason in an insane culture to continue to allow the glory of God to be shown. Paul says we live in a warped and twisted, crooked generation in which we shine like stars as we hold firmly to the word of life. So here's my concluding thought, okay? I don't want you to hear, and I didn't want you to hear this thought of, I've got to do these things. What I'm saying is allow the glory of God to so penetrate you that he has such power in your life that what you do is just a supernatural reaction to who is living inside of you. You have that much time to glorify him and let it echo into eternity. But you only have that. What are you doing with this little space of time? Joe Hill writes this. I'm sorry, Joe White writes this, not Joe Hill. Joe Hill could write it, I suppose, too. This is what he says. I want to tell you about a fascinating little girl I met last summer. Actually, the most fascinating 13-year-old I've ever met. Her name was Manny Lane. The day was June 10th. I was speaking to our junior high camp, K West. It was a beautiful Ozark mountain Sunday morning. I'd connected with these precious kids in a special way. And after the little talk, this warm, friendly, brown-eyed, brown-haired girl walked up to me and introduced herself. Hi, Joe. My name is Manny Lane. She was so humble and soft-spoken, but amazingly confident. Hi, Manny, I responded. How are you? Well, Mr. White, my dad died 7 days ago on June 3rd. And my heart broke for her. I was stunned. Oh, Manny, I'm so sorry. What happened? He had cancer. But I'm okay now. Manny, I asked, how are you able to get along so well? It must have been such a loss to you. Oh, it was hard, but the neatest thing happened to me. Well, tell me about it, Manny. Well, the day before my dad died, I was at camp, and my counselor was telling us all these amazing things about nature, like dragonflies only live 24 hours, and a goldfish only has a 3-second memory, and a crocodile can't stick his tongue out. Things like that. She went on. The day I got back to camp after my dad's funeral, I asked my counselor if I could go out to the campfire area and sit and think a little. She said, okay. So I walked over and I sat down on this log, and a dragonfly came in and landed on a rock right beside my feet. And I said to that dragonfly, what are you doing? Fly away. You only have 24 hours to live. Why don't you go do something with your life? She completed her amazing story with this. When I said that to the Lord, he spoke to my heart. Manny, what are you doing sitting there? You only have 24 hours to live. Go do something with your life. And Manny got up from the log and proceeded to literally bless everyone in the camp by the way she lived out her new life of faith. And the Lord spoke to me that day through Manny, and I hope he speaks to you. 24 hours to live. That's all we have. You and I are in the same boat. We only have 24 hours. Go do something. 24 hours to forgive whoever, whatever. 24 hours to thank God for saving you. 24 hours to send roses to your wife just because. 24 hours to drop a bad habit, confess a sin, and move on to freedom. Receive God's grace. Walk away a new Christian in Christ. 24 hours to memorize a Bible verse. 24 hours to show somebody how Jesus would do it. I trust your next 24 hours will be the greatest adventure of your life. It's a good thought, isn't it? I don't know how much time we've got left. As long as your heart is beating, you've got an opportunity. If you've wasted your life, stop it. Okay? Just stop. Move on. Forget about it. Next play. You can do it. Don't live the rest of your life wasting it. I will conclude with this, and we will worship the Lord together. I say this because this is perhaps the greatest way to illustrate the point, and most of you know it. The story of the football team who is about to play the most important game of their life. If they win this game, they go to state. So they all got in the locker room and they do what they always do. You know, they dress in their uniforms, everything except for their cleats, and they would all walk into the gym. And it was a darkened gym, and they would all lay on their backs. And the coaches said, you think about what you need to do to win this game. Blocks you need to make, passes you need to make, tackles you can make, being where you're supposed to be. Just lay there and think about it. And then they laid there for about 15 minutes, and the coach came in, gave a short tweet on his whistle, and all the players stood up and left, quietly walked out, got their cleats, went on the bus, and began to get rowdy, get ready for this football game. They got out of the bus, and they ran onto the field, and they destroyed the competition. They were so excited that they had won this game. The crowd was following them into the bus, rocking the bus back and forth. It was exhilarating. They got off the bus, went back into the locker room, and the kid that tells this story says, I just needed to be alone for a minute. So I left the locker room, took my cleats off, went back into the gym, and I laid down. And my ears adjusted to the silence, and my eyes adjusted to the light, and pretty soon I hear, and I look up, and I look under the exit sign, and there's a kid laying there, and he's sleeping. And I get up, and I walk over to him, and there he is laying there, fully uniform, stocking feet, and I just kicked his foot. He woke up. He said, let's go! We're going to tear these guys apart. This is going to be the greatest game of our lives. He said, I don't know how to break this to you. You slept through the game. It's over. It's over. And he said, I've never seen a face so sad in my life. He missed the most important game of his life. Don't let that happen to you. You will stand before the judgment seat of Christ. You have an opportunity now to build on this foundation, who is Jesus Christ. I'm going to get a new mic before next week. But you have an opportunity. Don't waste it. To the glory of God. Let's pray. Oh Lord, I thank you so much for this passage of Scripture that is so powerful. That you have called us to something greater than ourselves. That you have made us for eternity, but you've given us time to prepare for that. May we use the time that we have left to build with gold and silver and precious stones, to allow you to so penetrate us that people don't recognize us anymore, but they only see Jesus in us. I pray for those that feel like they've wasted their lives, that they would know that they're still alive and they have a chance to live for you. May they do that. We look forward, Lord, to your coming. We would love it if it happened right now. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Would you stand and we will conclude?